Hey everybody, Jonas Callis of the Hurt at Work Workers' Compensation Law Firm. Many of you know me as the Workers' Comp Guy. First, the obligatory disclaimer. The following information is for informational purposes only and does not constitute legal advice to anyone, nor does it create an attorney-client privilege with anyone. So today, I wanted to talk a little bit about the settlement of claims in the Virginia Workers' Compensation Commission. Everyone, I think, or almost everyone, has heard about lawsuit settlements at some point in their lives. Whether that came from the news or television, like, I don't know, Law and Order or something like that, or from friends or family members. It's, personal injury lawsuits, fender benders, things like that are just kind of a part of our lives. Well, like other types of personal injury settlements, injured workers generally have the option of receiving a lump sum payout or sometimes a structured settlement as a result of their work-related injuries. Now, if you've been to our website and or reviewed our videos or follow us on Facebook or Twitter, you're aware that a lot of times when we explain topics and issues and legal issues in Virginia about Virginia workers' compensation, a lot of times we try to cite case law or statutes that, I guess really for the sake of thoroughness, so people can kind of understand what we're talking about. Because remember, this is kind of for informational purposes, and it's geared to advising and providing education to people who are injured at work but don't necessarily aren't specialists about Virginia workers' compensation law. Okay, so now the thing is, with Virginia workers' compensation settlements, with the topic of settlements, settlements aren't really governed by statute or case law or anything like that, at least not the most important parts that injured workers are concerned about, okay? In other words, what I mean by that is there's no code section that you can point to that contains a formula, say, for determining the exact value of what my claim is worth or that kind of thing. It just doesn't exist. Or for that matter, there's no formula for determining the value of a workers' compensation claim for, let's say, a beneficiary who's receiving death benefits under the Virginia Workers' Compensation Act. It's not there. So I guess the best way to start out is just kind of start from the beginning and talk about it a little bit so everybody kind of can get their bearings. First of all, what is a settlement? Okay, a settlement, first and foremost, a settlement can be a good way to bringing closure and certainty to a process that's quite unpredictable and sometimes very contentious. And it can provide a very uncomfortable and kind of stressful workers' compensation experience for people. A settlement is what it is it's a relinquishment of rights by both sides, the injured worker and also the employer / workers' compensation insurance company. Okay. So for the injured worker, what does that mean? It means she or he is giving up important rights that they arguably would otherwise be entitled to, usually for some monetary amount. Usually there's some sort of agreed monetary amount, because most settlements are lump sum. There's an agreed monetary amount that ends up coming in the form of a check. So because of that, because the injured worker is giving up rights and benefits that they would otherwise be entitled to, it's very, very important to understand what rights, what you're giving up. What things would you have been entitled to? What are you relinquishing by voluntarily entering into this settlement? Because if you have certain injuries and certain disabilities and certain work restrictions, which could end up being permanent, which could make your claim be valued somewhere between $100,000 and $150,000, and you settle for $20,000 or $30,000, that's not good. It's just not good. So you have to understand what you're giving up, right, in a settlement, because it is a voluntary agreement by all parties involved. So, yeah, I've said it a couple times now. Because it's voluntary, both parties must, first of all, agree to settle. If one party is not amenable to settling, nothing's going to happen. And the commission or no one else can force one side or the other, the injured worker or the employer or the insurance company, to settle, really. So, and in addition to that, both sides must agree on the amount of settlement and the terms of the settlement. So it's almost like negotiating a contract, if you're familiar with doing that. There's a lot of leeway as to what you can negotiate, although usually most of them fall into a very narrow agreement. Most of the time, injured worker relinquishes certain defined benefits for a monetary amount. So, what this means for the injured worker, and this is an important takeaway, I think, is because sometimes what insurance company, the claims adjusters will do, is they're constantly gauging who the injured worker is. And, some people are smarter than others, or just more seasoned than others, and have a better understanding of how things work. And if the insurance company or the claims adjuster believes they can get away with offering what's called a nominal settlement. Nominal means kind of like not a lot of money, just to kind of get rid of a claim. If they think they can offer $5,000 and maybe the injured worker is destitute, doesn't have a lot of wealth or money, and doesn't really understand how much his or her claim is worth. Maybe it's worth $100,000, but they just don't get that, right? Insurance claims adjusters, workers' compensation insurance companies jump on that. They seize on that. They love that, right? So, and what it means, what the fact that a settlement is completely voluntary, is it means that injured workers do not have to accept the insurance company's lowball settlement offers. Okay, you can decline. You can say, "No, I'm good. I'm good. Thanks. No thanks." So that's important. Okay, now, and this is the most common question I'm asked, of course. This is probably what you're sitting there thinking, like, quit yammering on, Jonas. How much is my Virginia workers' compensation claim worth? All right, so I've already kind of alluded to this, okay? There's no statute or case law really governing this, right? There's no formula. There's no mandated legal process. There's no magic formula. There's no push-button calculator, really. To arrive at the exact value of what my workers' compensation claim should be worth, okay? The reality of the situation is that there are many factors to consider, and that's an answer that clients just hate to hear, okay? But it's the truth. There are a lot of factors. I'm going to touch on some of them so you kind of know what I'm talking about, so it doesn't seem like I'm just kind of not really giving you any information, okay? So, and that's because the facts of each claim are unique, right? The injuries and accidents are usually at least somewhat different. The age and recovery rate of the workers are different. The extent of the injuries are different. The medical treatment is sometimes different, right? The doctors aren't limited to one treatment modality, right? There's not like one uniform. Sometimes there may be, but a lot of times there are treatment options, and some doctors prefer this treatment modality while other doctors prefer this treatment modality, right? So there are a lot of factors that go into how quickly a worker recovers, whether they recover fully, et cetera, okay? So some of the factors: the extent and permanency of the injured worker's injuries. This is kind of the same factors that if you've reviewed our website and listened to our other videos, this is some of the same factors that we talk about with permanent partial disability benefits and permanent total disability benefits, right? How extensive are the injuries? What's the permanency? Like, is it just going to last forever, or what's up? So, another factor: the injured worker's pre-accident average weekly wage. So important to get that right. If you're not sure what I'm talking about, check out some of our other videos. Check out our website, because it's important to get that right. The extent of the injured worker's disability due to the injuries, including but not limited to the amount of time the injured worker would be out of work, and combined with what are the chances that the injured worker could obtain some sort of suitable light duty work, and at what pay rate, right? Because if it's at a low pay rate and the injured worker had a high pre-accident average weekly wage, there's a lot of temporary partial disability exposure there, right? So that increases the settlement value, the value and or the settlement value of the claim. The amount of wage loss / indemnity benefits that the injured worker has received. And actually, so there I'm talking about temporary total disability, temporary partial disability, and also permanent partial disability, or some combination of those three, right? Because really what we're talking about is the 500-week cap on those benefits, right? Like how many weeks of that has the injured worker received? So how many are left to be received potentially, right? That goes into calculating the value of a claim. The degree of the loss of use of a particular body part, especially knowing that Virginia law assigns values, I guess, to different body parts. The likely cost of ongoing future medical treatment. This is a big one because quite often medical treatment is the major expense of a workers' compensation claim. So if the insurance company wants to settle, they will need to, if it's an expense, if there's a lot of medical treatment going on, they'll need to cough up money to settle that aspect out. Consideration of whether the injured worker will be able to return to his pre-accident work. If he or she is, there's not a lot of indemnity wage loss exposure going forward. And also another factor, important factor, especially during the early part of claims, is how strong the employer and insurance company's defenses are to the claim. If they have strong defenses to the compensability of the claim in the first place, I mean, arguably, if they win, the claim's worth zero, right? So that's a factor, right, to be considered. Obviously, if the claim's already been accepted or there's already an award, that's not really an issue, but it has to be looked at. So those are the primary factors considered in most workers' compensation claims. Now, I did not forget to mention pain and suffering benefits. A lot of people always think that their pain and suffering is worth something. It is worth something in regular litigation. If you're rear-ended or something, if it's a non-work-related accident, pain and suffering is worth something. However, there's no provision in the Virginia Workers' Compensation Act that allows for recoupment of pain and suffering damages or anything like that, okay? So I didn't forget, workers' compensation settlements just will never include any money for pain and suffering. It is what it is. For more information on this, check out our website, check out our other videos. What types of settlements are available in the Virginia Workers' Compensation Commission? Traditionally, typically, Virginia workers' compensation settlements can take a couple of forms, I guess, maybe three forms. The first one, and I've touched on this, lump sum settlements. This is the most common settlement by far because it's the most straightforward settlement. You give me money, I relinquish my claims to any of my rights to any other claims in the Workers' Compensation Commission, right? So, and typically what these claims are, the most expensive aspects of a workers' compensation claim, typically is as we've discussed, the right to medical treatment, right? Lifetime medical benefits. And also the disability part of it, right? Temporary total disability, temporary partial disability, permanent partial disability. So all of those things. You can't make any more claims if you settle, if you have some sort of lump sum settlement. The injured worker doesn't have any standing to make any more claims. Second type of settlement, lump sum. It's again a lump sum. Lump sum indemnity settlement, though. It's just one aspect of the claim with open medical payments. So it's kind of like the lump sum settlement, right, that we just discussed, except you're not really closing out the medical aspect. This is where there's more uncertainty with the medical. Could be expensive, could be kind of leveling out, right? Sometimes the injured worker will want to settle the indemnity aspect of the claim, in which case they won't be entitled to any more weekly disability payments, okay, because they will have received some sort of lump sum while keeping the meds open. So the employer/insurance company will still be responsible for payment of all reasonable necessary medical treatment and causally related medical treatment, but not for any what's considered wage loss or indemnity benefits. Okay, so the last most common kind, even though it's the least common by far, are structured settlements. A structured settlement, also called a structured annuity, it's an agreement to receive guaranteed predetermined payments at a predetermined interval, either for a certain period of time or sometimes for the remainder of the injured worker's life. Sometimes they'll include, not just for the injured worker's life, but also for any people like survivors of the injured worker that may be reliant upon the injured worker. And it's the same kind of settlement in principle, right? The injured worker's given up the rights to workers' compensation benefits in exchange for a structured settlement. What happens in a structured settlement? Obviously, the workers' compensation insurance company, the employer's insurance company, still pays a lump sum, but what they do is they pay it to like a financial institution. A lot of times, like MetLife or something, just a financial institution. So they've already paid it, right? But the agreement is that the financial institution will invest and manage the money and pay out, so much money per week, for a certain period, on this date, or every 6 months or every year or whatever on this date, and they'll continue to do that for X many years or until the injured worker passes away or something like that. Okay. The benefits of the structured settlement. Three benefits really. I feel like number one is guaranteed payments, right? And that's kind of related actually to the third one here. There's no risk of losing money on market vulnerable investments or just to poor financial management, right? Some people may blow the money if they get a lump sum settlement, right? So this guarantees that you won't blow the money because it's just kind of a guaranteed weekly payment. And the other reason is customization to meet immediate and future financial obligations. It depends on what's going on in the injured worker's life. Okay. Now, the primary drawback, and this is related to the first reasons I talked about, the structured settlement is the scheduled payments. Right? It's scheduled payments weekly or monthly or semi-annually or whatever, right? They're locked in. Okay. So if you need more money, good luck. Right, because you really have a contract, and it's going to be hard to negotiate and get more money. Okay, so that's the thing. So in any event, those are the primary types of settlements you can have. How long does it take to settle a claim? Well, we talked about this kind of already. We did, but we didn't. It's voluntary, right? Some claims never settle. Okay, so it's not something that must happen. There's no provision in the law. There's no official timeline or timetable that governs the length of time that a settlement process should take. Some occur within hours of settlement negotiations. And again, some cases never ever settle. Either the timing's never right, or the injured worker wants too much, or a lot of times the insurance company just doesn't want to pay what the claim is probably worth. So the length of time it takes to settle, it depends on various factors. Okay, as you might expect, the nature of the injuries, any special facts in the case, positional leverage each side has or thinks they have, and that goes to their willingness to budge and move up and down, right? Especially down. The willingness of the injured party to resolve the case, the willingness of the employer/insurance company to resolve the case, and the reasonableness, a lot of times, what I alluded to earlier, the reasonableness of the employer and the insurance company. And so that's, some cases settle quickly, some cases take a year or whatever. A lot of cases settle after the medical treatment and disability has kind of stabilized and everybody feels more comfortable looking at what they're faced with going forward. It's easier to maybe assess that, or at least provide a range within some sort of confidence interval. So assuming the sides settle, how long until I get my check, right? How long until the injured worker gets the settlement payment? Once the parties do reach a settlement, the Workers' Compensation Commission actually does become involved in the process. They have a settlement department, right? They look over the claims, they review the claims, and the settlement, in order for the payment to be sent to the injured worker, it has to be approved by the Virginia Workers' Compensation Commission. If the commission believes that the settlement they're looking at, settlement documents, that is in the best interest of the injured worker, then they typically will approve the settlement. If they don't agree it's in the best interest of the worker, they won't approve it, regardless of whether the injured worker agrees to it or not. So, there's no governing timeline. Although, assuming, once the settlement documents are signed by all the parties and submitted to the Workers' Compensation Commission Settlement Department, if the language used in the settlement documents is technically correct, and if any ancillary documents that need to be submitted are submitted, timely submitted and signed and everything appropriately, a lot of times these settlements can be approved in 4 weeks or fewer. But again, if the technical language is wrong, and if there's an issue getting some of the documents that need to go with the settlement, it can take months after that. So it also varies and depends on the party's behavior a lot of times. I think that's about all I wanted to cover about Virginia workers' compensation settlements today. Thanks for watching my video. I hope it was helpful. If it was helpful, or if the website was helpful, or if our other videos were helpful, I'm glad. Tell your friends, tell your family members. The whole point of this, the videos, the website's chock full of information to help injured workers who really don't know what they're faced with. They're kind of like, what is this workers' compensation claim about? Why are they hassling me? Why don't they just give me my benefits, right? It's designed to help people understand what's going on in their workers' compensation claim. So if you found this helpful or any of the other stuff helpful, chances are someone else will find it helpful too. So tell your friends, tell your family members. They may need it. They may have a claim that you don't know about. They could know someone who has a claim that you don't know about, and they could tell them, hey, check out this website. It's pretty good. It has a lot of information, and it's been really helpful for me. Maybe it'll be helpful for you, that kind of thing. I always feel like it's better to have the information there and not need it than it is to need the information and not have it or not know where to get it. And that's all I got about settlements. That's all I got today. So until next time, stay safe and don't get hurt at work.